Well, I'll have to thank Nicola for that new use of tables. I'll have to think about that at Herman Miller. I'm Gary Smith. I'm the Director of Design at Herman Miller, and it's been a great privilege to work for a company with a long history and culture of respect for design. And being a graduate of Michigan State, I must confess I never expected to be sitting here speaking at this great university, especially this week, but I appreciate it very much. When I think about the question of how is design evolving, I must frankly admit I'm a bit worried. There's an enormous range of demonstrated capability out there, and I don't mean manipulation of the tools. That's almost universally excellent. I mean the quality of thinking. I see great work every day, but I also see daily examples of what I'll call amazing mediocrity. And I wonder, what's at the root of this difference? So I've come to realize that many of the designers whose work I'd question have little discernible sense of how they evaluate or measure their own work. I'm happy if you're happy is about as deep as it gets. Maybe I'm happy, but I can't even tell you why. And I think it should be more than that. So let's start by exploring at least why, in Herman Miller's view, we so value the contributions of our creative partners. It's an important foundation of our innovation process and strategy, going outside of ourselves to listen to a creative view. Our formula is accepting of a healthy tension, an acknowledgement to being provoked by someone who connects the dots differently than our own deductive logic. Creative people assimilate ideas in ways that transcend deductive logic. We expect to squirm a little bit. We expect to be made uncomfortable and to be taken to a place we can't get to on our own. We're in a very quiet locale in Western Michigan and need the diversity and freedom that our model provides. Designer is provocateur. But this is risky, becoming vulnerable, let alone to abandon to the creative voice with a reverence for design, in the words of a loose paraphrase of our founder, D.J. Dupree. It places upon the designer the principal responsibility and burden of synthesis. The designer must respect this vulnerability and know that their obligation goes beyond the paying client and the end user. Charles Eames knew that he was accountable to the factory worker. The quality of his work affected the quality of the food on that factory worker's table. In this model, the design synthesis is bracketed by corporate work on the front end, contextual research, and problem definition, and on the back with marketing and long-term design evolution based on the market voice, mostly through customization and application design at point of use. But it is centered around the design synthesis. But let's go further. George Nelson said that, quote, design is a response to social change. And implicit was the notion of designer in the primary synthesis role at that time. We see a molecule with various elements of the business: customers, brand, technology, engineering, marketing, tools, etc. There's more. And design pings off of these inputs and synthesizes a solution. To be successful in this model requires extraordinary brilliance and insight. And by the way, if to any of those who possess that, please talk to me later. The model, though, is less clear today. We've heard several examples of this, that given the complexity of business in the world, challenging demands of complex customers, global market phenomena, the likelihood that a designer in a remote studio will have the full grasp of complex customer criteria or have command of all the potential tools to aid in solving a problem is rare, if not naive. So how do we move further? I think a more expanded understanding of the role of design is required. Design is not a specialized service, nor is it constrained to just R&D. It should be a part of the business design, the brand projection, and the product experience combined. Design must become a more networked practice. I'm seeing this happening, and I'm encouraged by it and want to continue to encourage it. But as you can see, though, this raises new questions. Who is in control? It's always the question. What are the protocols for information, ownership and sharing, authorship, value creation? Who has the ultimate responsibility here? Each relationship or project will answer these questions differently. And in this new model, I want to connect now to my first observation, which is the absence of clarity on how design should then be evaluated. The designer and the client must both declare the principles upon which they stand and craft a relationship which aspires to the mutual expression of these principles. It's a bigger question than the project brief. It's what guides the approach to those problems. To provide a great example of this from a client's point of view, let's return to Mr. Dupree. DJ articulated 4 truths, seeing design as a moral obligation, in congruence with his strong personal faith. The design culture at Herman Miller is very influenced to this day by this approach, and these truths were incredibly insightful, especially given that DJ had no formal design training. I'm going to review each of these 4 briefly, although I'm not going to try to explain them. I've spent nearly 20 years thinking about them and interpreting them. But I'm going to let the thoughts float there for your own interpretation. Durability. Truth is not transient. It never wears out. Truth bears repeated examination, and the memory of truth is hard to efface. A design, therefore, must have long life and usefulness. Unity. Unity of purpose in the design. Unity in materials used. Unity makes for order, consistency, and inner coherence. Unity excludes unnecessary things, weight, sizes, and elements. Unity leads to simplicity. Integrity. Integrity demands that anything contrived merely for the sake of effect and not organically related to the purpose of the product must be ruled out. This principle relates to other things such as art and literature, and I think we could easily add architecture. Inevitability. A design must give final and inevitable expression of an idea so that in studying it we say, that is right. This is the way it has to be. Those are some pretty high standards to ask a young designer. I deal with designers who are young and old, and at any level of maturity, these are challenging questions. Now you're probably thinking, man, I just want to turn some hours, pay the bills, enhance the cash flow. But that's not what this is about. The point in sharing these is not to project these should become your standards, although they're probably not a bad place to start. To look at a more contemporary example, this time from a designer's point of view, I'd like to look at the design checklist of Bill Stump, one of the greatest talents ever employed by Herman Miller. In sharing this checklist with us, Bill wrote, "There are no surefire rules to guarantee the work of a designer or the success of a designed product. Here is a list of qualities, though, I think more often than not, signal good design." Like DJ's truths, Bill expanded upon each of these stories and examples. He shared them with this little book. One of my favorites to illustrate is it well-earned profit, is this short story. I had a friend who started a bagel franchise business. This is Bill talking. When I asked him, did you go to New York and, research the very best bagels? He said, no. No one in the Midwest knows a good bagel from a bad bagel. So I get my bagels frozen from a commercial bread supplier in Nebraska. Thankfully, Bill says, he went out of business. Bill always had an amazing knack for talking simply and directly. And so with these 2 examples, I'd like to challenge designers here to think more deeply about your work. I'd encourage designers and design patrons alike to engage together in the dialogue and the discovery. We're talking about a client and a designer so invested in each other that there is no success or failure not mutually felt. So how is design evolving? I can't predict where it will go. I can counsel that it become more thoughtful, more introspective, more integrated, more uncomfortable in having bared its own truths, more demanding of the same from its partners, and ultimately, more enduring in result. Thank you.